Your liver controls how fast you age, the hidden cause of metabolic aging. When the vast majority of individuals contemplate the complex, often daunting, process of aging, their thoughts rarely gravitate towards the intricate workings of their liver. Instead, the common perception of aging is far more superficial and often focused on external manifestations or widely recognized internal degradations. People tend to conjure images of fine lines and deep wrinkles, gradually etching themselves across their faces, visible markers of time's relentless passage. They envision the onset of stiff, aching joints, transforming once effortless movements into sources of discomfort and limitation, eroding their mobility and independence. The chilling prospect of memory decline, a gradual fading of cognitive sharpness and recall, often occupies their concerns, signaling a loss of mental acuity. Or perhaps they contemplate the slow, inevitable weakening of the cardiovascular system, a heart that once beat robustly, now struggling to maintain its vital rhythm, increasing vulnerability to serious conditions. Yet, amidst these familiar anxieties, there lies a profoundly underestimated and silently industrious organ nestled discreetly beneath the protective cage of your ribs, the liver. This remarkable anatomical powerhouse, often overlooked and underappreciated, is in fact the silent conductor orchestrating the most fundamental metabolic processes that decisively determine whether your body retains its youthful metabolic vigor and resilience, or, conversely, begins an insidious and progressive slide towards a landscape riddled with chronic diseases and accelerated biological aging. True aging, in its most profound biological sense, transcends the mere linear passage of chronological time, which is merely a number on a calendar. It is, at its core, the relentless cumulative accumulation of metabolic damage, an insidious process that systematically erodes the body's intricate cellular and systemic machinery from within. And critically, your liver stands as the undisputed ground zero for this entire cascade of damage. It is here, within the liver's complex cellular machinery, that this burgeoning metabolic damage is either effectively controlled, contained, and even potentially reversed, or, tragically, allowed to spiral uncontrollably into widespread systemic dysfunction, impacting every corner of your physiology. As Dr. Alex, with over a decade immersed in the high-stakes, fast-paced environment of emergency medicine, I have personally witnessed the devastating endpoints of unmanaged metabolic disease more frequently than I can possibly articulate. The stark realities of acute heart attacks, debilitating strokes, the myriad and severe complications arising from diabetes, and the life-altering progression of kidney failure. These are the grim realities encountered day after day in the emergency room. In tracing these severe conditions backward, meticulously searching for the underlying, unifying thread that inextricably links them all, one consistently arrives at the same pivotal conclusion: widespread metabolic dysfunction. This dysfunction, often insidious in its onset and progression, typically begins years, sometimes even decades, before overt and alarming symptoms finally manifest, silently undermining the body's foundational health and setting the stage for future illness. The liver, despite its central and undeniable role in this entire metabolic symphony and its profound influence on long-term health, remains paradoxically the organ about which most people possess the least comprehensive understanding, especially concerning its profound implications for longevity and sustained well-being. Therefore, to truly grasp the monumental importance of this organ in the context of healthy aging, it is imperative to delve deeper into its actual and multifaceted functions. Most people's rudimentary understanding of the liver often extends no further than simplistic notions like it processes alcohol or it detoxifies the body by filtering out toxins. While these statements hold a kernel of truth and represent genuine, albeit partial, liver functions, they barely begin to scratch the surface of just how utterly critical this multifaceted organ is to the intricate tapestry of your overall metabolic health. the liver is far more than a mere filter or a waste disposal unit. It is, in essence, the supreme metabolic traffic controller for your entire physiological system, making continuous, moment-to-moment, nuanced decisions about the precise fate of every single nutrient that enters your bloodstream, shaping your health with every passing minute of every day. Consider the liver's role as a central regulator of blood sugar. Between meals, when your body isn't actively consuming food, it is your liver that diligently maintains stable blood glucose levels by releasing stored glucose, glycogen, into the bloodstream. This critical function ensures a constant and steady supply of energy, vital for keeping your brain functioning optimally and all other organs performing their essential tasks. Furthermore, the liver acts as a sophisticated processing and storage facility for a vast array of essential vitamins and minerals, releasing them precisely as needed, ensuring cellular functions across the body are adequately supported. It plays a crucial role in clearing used hormones, such as estrogen, testosterone, and cortisol, from your bloodstream, preventing their accumulation to problematic, even toxic levels that could disrupt delicate endocrine balance. Beyond these vital roles, the liver is also responsible for producing bile, an indispensable digestive fluid absolutely essential for the proper digestion and absorption of dietary fats and fat-soluble vitamins. Simultaneously, it actively breaks down not only external toxins but also internal inflammatory byproducts that are constantly generated by the body's own processes, substances that would otherwise accumulate and inflict cellular damage on your delicate tissues. Indeed, it's not an overstatement to say that virtually every single major longevity pathway within your body, those complex molecular networks that dictate how long and how well you live, runs through the liver in some fundamental and inextricable way. When your liver is operating at its peak with full functionality and metabolic flexibility, it makes intelligent, adaptive, and balanced decisions about how to handle the incessant influx of incoming nutrients, thereby maintaining a state of exquisite metabolic equilibrium. However, when the liver becomes compromised or dysfunctional, these crucial decisions become biased, rigid, and ultimately detrimental. For instance, after you consume a meal, a surge of nutrients floods into your bloodstream: glucose from carbohydrates, amino acids from proteins, and fatty acids from fats. The very first major processing station these nutrients encounter is your liver. Here, your liver faces a fundamental, moment-by-moment decision regarding each nutrient type. Should it immediately burn this nutrient for instant energy to meet current demands? Should it store it away for future use, perhaps to replenish energy reserves? Or should it convert it into an entirely different substance, perhaps a building block for other molecules, or package it up and export it to other tissues that require it? A healthy, metabolically flexible liver makes these intricate decisions dynamically, with remarkable precision, adapting its response based on your body's current physiological needs and prevailing energy states. If you've just completed a strenuous workout, for example, your liver might intelligently direct incoming nutrients towards muscle repair and recovery. If your body's glycogen stores, its immediate energy reserves, are depleted, it might prioritize refilling those. If you're in a calorie deficit, the liver might favor burning fat for energy, a testament to its adaptive capabilities. The entire system is meticulously designed to be responsive, agile, and supremely adaptive to the ever-changing metabolic landscape of your body. But herein lies the critical problem. When your liver becomes metabolically compromised, this intelligent decision-making apparatus becomes rigid, dysfunctional, and ultimately pathological. Instead of making nuanced choices, the liver begins defaulting towards storage and, more specifically, towards excessive fat creation. This happens regardless of whether your body actually needs more stored energy. It develops an unhealthy bias towards producing and actively exporting fat, even if if you are already carrying a significant amount of excess body fat. This metabolic inflexibility, this profound loss of appropriate dynamic decision-making by the liver, is not merely an inconvenience. It is one of the foundational and core drivers of accelerated biological aging, setting off a cascade of detrimental health outcomes. The central switch that fundamentally flips your liver from a state of metabolic health and vitality to one of metabolic dysfunction and disease is alarmingly the progressive accumulation of fat inside your liver cells themselves. This increasingly prevalent condition, known as non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, NAFLD, has become shockingly common across developed countries. Current conservative estimates suggest that roughly 25 to 30% of adult populations are affected by it. What's particularly concerning is that many individuals remain entirely unaware they have it, primarily because they've never been screened or tested, and often, in its early stages, it presents with absolutely no overt symptoms. The critical, often overlooked aspect to understand is that fatty liver is not a benign cosmetic issue, akin to having a little extra adipose tissue beneath your skin. Far from it. It is an active, progressive metabolic disease that fundamentally alters the way your liver functions at a cellular and systemic level. And compounding this stealthy progression, it often develops even when standard liver enzymes, which are typically measured in routine blood tests, appear perfectly normal. This deceptive normality means that you can harbor significant silent liver dysfunction, slowly brewing beneath the surface, without any obvious warning signs from conventional diagnostic markers. When fat accumulates within liver cells, it doesn't just sit there passively like inert baggage. Instead, it actively interferes with the delicate cellular machinery, particularly the mechanisms responsible for responding to insulin. Insulin, as most are aware, is the pivotal hormone that signals your liver to cease producing glucose and, conversely, to begin efficiently storing incoming nutrients. However, when liver cells become engorged and packed with fat, they become profoundly insulin resistant. This means they effectively stop responding properly to insulin signals, much like a tired soldier ignoring commands. So, even when insulin levels in the bloodstream are chronically high, an attempt by the body to compensate, and even when blood sugar is already elevated, the insulin-resistant liver stubbornly continues churning out more glucose into the bloodstream, behaving as if the body were in a perpetually fasted state, paradoxically needing more sugar. Your pancreas, detecting this rising blood sugar, responds by releasing even more insulin, desperately trying to force the liver and other peripheral tissues to respond and absorb the excess glucose. The unfortunate outcome of this relentless compensatory effort is the creation of a state of chronic hyperinsulinemia, persistently and pathologically elevated insulin levels. This condition, often overlooked in standard medical assessments, is in fact the metabolic starting point for a vast and destructive cascade of accelerated aging processes and chronic diseases. This is precisely where type 2 diabetes typically begins its insidious journey. This is where the progression of atherosclerosis, the hardening and narrowing of arteries, accelerates dramatically, increasing cardiovascular risk. This is where visceral fat, the dangerous adipose tissue that envelops your internal organs, starts accumulating insidiously. It's also where blood pressure often begins its relentless creep upwards, contributing to hypertension. Crucially, all of these seemingly disparate age-related diseases are not isolated, independent conditions. They are, in fact, downstream consequences. Symptomatic manifestations of the same upstream metabolic dysfunction, a dysfunction critically centered and initiated in your liver. Once you have chronically elevated insulin and glucose persistently circulating in your bloodstream, the damage quickly becomes systemic, meaning it spreads its detrimental effects around the entire body, leaving no system untouched. High blood sugar, for example, causes a process called glycation, where glucose molecules randomly and haphazardly attach themselves to proteins throughout your body, producing what we scientifically term advanced glycation end products, or AGEs. These modified proteins become stiff, sticky, and dysfunctional. They trigger chronic inflammation and accumulate in various tissues over time, contributing to the stiffening of blood vessels, damaging the delicate lens of your eye, and degrading the vital collagen in your skin and joints, leading to visible and functional personal signs of aging. The toxic combination of high glucose and high insulin also severely impairs mitochondrial function. Mitochondria, the tiny powerhouses inside your cells, are responsible for generating almost all of the energy your body needs. When they become dysfunctional, they leak reactive oxygen species, highly destructive molecules that create oxidative stress. This oxidative stress, in turn, damages DNA, essential proteins, and cellular membranes, further accelerating cellular aging. While your cells do possess remarkable repair mechanisms to counteract this constant assault, when the damage is happening persistently, day in and day out, week after week, year after year, these repair systems become utterly overwhelmed and eventually fail. Perhaps most importantly, this sustained pathological metabolic state generates chronic low-grade inflammation throughout your entire body. Your immune system, constantly on high alert, starts producing inflammatory molecules like cytokines, interleukin-6, or TNF-alpha, which were originally designed for specific purposes like fighting acute infections or healing injuries. However, in this state, they are now being continuously released at low but damaging levels. This chronic inflammatory state, sometimes aptly termed inflammaging, relentlessly damages your blood vessels, significantly accelerates atherosclerosis, impairs your brain function, degrades joint cartilage leading to arthritis, and critically interferes with the vital maintenance and repair of your muscles. The brain, in particular, is extraordinarily vulnerable to these metabolic assaults. Insulin resistance specifically reduces the brain's ability to take up and utilize glucose effectively, essentially starving some of the most crucial neurons of their primary fuel source. Simultaneously, the vascular damage stemming from chronic inflammation reduces the critical blood flow to the brain, further compromising its function. The devastating combination of these factors dramatically increases the risk for both vascular dementia and Alzheimer's disease. Studies consistently and unequivocally demonstrate that people with insulin resistance in midlife have significantly higher rates of cognitive decline decades later. This underscores a chilling truth. Your brain's aging trajectory and its future cognitive health are being powerfully set by your metabolic health today. Now, there's another critically important pathway through which your liver health exerts profound control over the aging process, and that is its intimate connection with your muscle tissue. When your liver is insulin resistant and persistently dumping excess glucose into your bloodstream, your muscles, which normally act as a major glucose disposal system by taking up and storing sugar, also inevitably become insulin resistant. What this means in practical terms is that the anabolic signals, those crucial hormonal and cellular cues that normally trigger muscle protein synthesis and promote muscle growth, get significantly blunted. Your muscles become less responsive, less efficient at growing and repairing, both in response to nutrient intake, feeding, and physical exertion, exercise. The direct and devastating result is accelerated muscle loss, a process known as sarcopenia, which is a natural component of aging but gets dramatically worsened and hastened by metabolic dysfunction. And muscle loss, unfortunately, creates yet another vicious cycle, a self-perpetuating spiral of decline. This is because muscle tissue is one of the primary and most metabolically active sites where glucose gets efficiently taken up from the bloodstream, helping to regulate blood sugar. Less muscle mass therefore directly translates to worse glucose control, which in turn exacerbates your existing insulin resistance, which then accelerates muscle loss even further. This creates a dangerous feedback loop. Muscle loss is, in fact, one of the strongest and most reliable predictors of healthy longevity that we currently possess. We know, through extensive research, that individuals who actively maintain their muscle mass as they age tend to live longer, healthier lives. They remain functionally independent for longer periods, retaining the ability to perform daily activities with ease. They also exhibit significantly lower rates of essentially every major chronic disease that we know of. However, you cannot effectively maintain muscle mass, let alone build it, when your liver is metabolically dysfunctional because the adverse hormonal environment that your compromised liver creates actively prevents it. This is precisely why liver health indirectly controls how well you age physically, not just how your internal organs function, but whether you retain the vital strength, mobility, and vitality that fundamentally determine your quality of life in later decades. One of the most insidious and dangerous aspects of liver disease is just how quietly and surreptitiously it progresses. Your liver possesses an enormous reserve capacity, a truly remarkable ability to compensate for damage. You can literally lose half of your liver function before any overt symptoms typically begin to appear. Furthermore, unlike your joints or your back, which readily communicate pain when something is wrong, your liver has very few pain fibers. Therefore, when it's becoming diseased or accumulating fat, it doesn't hurt. The damage accumulates silently, insidiously, over years or even decades, often completely undetected. By the time individuals finally develop obvious and distressing symptoms like profound fatigue, jaundice, yellowing of the skin and eyes, or fluid accumulation, ascites, the underlying disease is often already well advanced and much harder to treat. This silent progression fundamentally differentiates liver disease from conditions like joint arthritis, where you typically feel the problem developing early on and can intervene promptly with lifestyle changes or medical treatment. With your liver, you absolutely need to be proactive about monitoring its health, because waiting for symptoms means waiting far too long for optimal intervention. Most people, understandably, don't have routine access to expensive ultrasounds or MRI scans to directly measure liver fat. However, you can gain a remarkably good sense of your liver health from basic measurements and routine blood tests, empowering you to take preventative action. Waist circumference, for instance, is a surprisingly powerful and predictive indicator. Visceral fat, the fat around your organs, and liver fat track together very closely. So if you're accumulating fat around your abdomen, creating an expanding waistline, you're almost certainly accumulating it in your liver as well. Blood triglycerides are another strong and often overlooked marker here. When your liver is dysfunctional and aberrantly producing excess fat, that fat gets packaged into triglyceride-rich particles and subsequently released into your bloodstream. Therefore, elevated triglycerides, especially if your HDL, good cholesterol, is simultaneously low, is a significant red flag for liver fat accumulation and metabolic distress. Liver enzymes like ALT, AST, or gamma-GT can provide important clues, but it's crucial to note that they are not always elevated, even when significant fat is present in the liver. However, if they are creeping up over time, even if they're still technically within the normal range, that trend matters immensely and warrants attention. Fasting glucose and HbA1c, a measure of your average blood sugar over the past 2 to 3 months, reflect how well your liver and your body as a whole is responding to insulin. The key in assessing these markers is looking at clusters of mild abnormalities and discernible trends, rather than waiting for any single marker to be dramatically outside the normal laboratory ranges, by which point the problem is often advanced. If your waist is expanding, if your triglycerides are consistently 150 mdl or above, if your fasting glucose is creeping towards the higher end of normal, and your liver enzymes are slowly but steadily rising, even if none of these are technically classified as abnormal yet, you probably have metabolic dysfunction developing in your liver that urgently needs to be addressed. And here's the truly encouraging news, the really good news about all of this. Liver fat is highly reversible, and it responds with remarkable speed and efficacy to targeted dietary and lifestyle changes. Unlike atherosclerosis, which accumulates over decades and is notoriously difficult to reverse, or joint damage, which very often becomes permanent once established, liver fat can decrease substantially within a mere few weeks of making the right interventions. This reversal often occurs even before you've lost significant amounts of total body weight, highlighting the liver's incredible regenerative capacity. What this creates is an enormous, unparalleled opportunity for longevity intervention. If you can catch liver fat early and actively reverse it, then you possess the power to prevent the entire cascade of downstream metabolic damage before it becomes entrenched and irreversible. You are, in essence, hitting the reset button on your metabolic age, giving your body a precious chance to maintain the flexibility, resilience, and vitality it enjoyed when your liver was in its optimal healthy state. So what actually drives the accumulation of liver fat in the first place? Well, despite common misconceptions, it's not primarily dietary fat. The chief culprits are excess refined carbohydrates and added sugars, particularly when consumed in liquid form. When you consume more carbohydrate than your liver can efficiently store, as glycogen or your muscles can burn for immediate energy, your liver converts that excess glucose into fat through a process called de novo lipogenesis, which literally translates to new fat creation. And that newly created fat gets deposited right where it was made, within the liver cells themselves. Liquid calories are particularly problematic and insidious because they bypass the body's normal satiety mechanisms. When you drink something like an energy drink, a sugary soda, a fruit smoothie loaded with sugar, or even a sweetened tea or coffee with copious amounts of added sugar, you can consume enormous quantities of sugar and calories without ever feeling truly full or satisfied. That liquid sugar then heads straight and rapidly to your liver, often overwhelming its processing capacity. Fructose, which constitutes half of common table sugar and approximately 55% of high fructose corn syrup, is almost entirely metabolized in the liver. This unique metabolic pathway makes it especially efficient at generating liver fat when consumed in excess. Ultra-processed foods further compound this problem because they are typically engineered to be hyper-palatable, designed to be intensely gratifying and addictive, while simultaneously being deficient in essential nutrients like protein and fiber, the two nutrients that actually create lasting satiety and signal fullness to your brain. So what inevitably happens is that you end up eating more total calories than your body needs, and a disproportionate number of those calories come from rapidly absorbed, refined carbohydrates and sugars. Since you never feel truly satisfied, this cycle drives further consumption, relentlessly pushing the problem of liver fat accumulation further. Therefore, if you are committed to protecting your liver health and genuinely slowing down the relentless march of metabolic aging, there are three fundamental interconnected interventions that matter more than anything else, forming the bedrock of metabolic well-being. The first, quite obviously, is reducing insulin demand. This means dramatically cutting refined carbohydrates, and especially all forms of added sugars from your diet. It entails prioritizing high-quality protein at each meal, which not only improves satiety, helping you feel fuller for longer, but also directly supports muscle maintenance and growth. And it also means consistently including fiber-rich vegetables, fruits, and whole foods that naturally slow glucose absorption, preventing sharp spikes, and generally improve the body's metabolic response to eating. The second fundamental intervention is creating daily windows where you're not eating. It is perfectly okay, even beneficial, to experience hunger sometimes. It's a natural physiological signal. Time-restricted eating, which involves condensing your eating window to perhaps 8 to 12 hours rather than grazing continuously throughout the entire day, gives your liver extended periods where insulin levels can naturally drop to a baseline. This allows your liver to shift out of constant storage mode and begin the vital process of mobilizing and burning stored fats, including the fat accumulated within its own cells. Avoiding late-night snacking is especially critical here because consuming food too close to bedtime, when you're about to be physically inactive for many hours, maximizes the portion of those ingested calories that will inevitably be stored as fat rather than being burned for energy. The third paramount intervention is building and maintaining muscle through consistent resistance training. This is profoundly important, extending far beyond mere aesthetics or brute strength. Muscle tissue is highly metabolically active and serves as a crucial glucose disposal system, as I've emphasized numerous times. The more muscle you possess and the more regularly you use it through physical activity, the better your body becomes at handling incoming carbohydrates without them being converted into problematic liver fat. Resistance training also directly improves insulin sensitivity throughout the body, which helps to reverse the underlying metabolic dysfunction at multiple levels simultaneously, creating a powerful synergistic effect. Beyond these three core interventions, there are several other factors that significantly amplify your results and bolster liver health. Sleep quality, for instance, is far more important than most people realize or give credit for. Poor and insufficient sleep consistently increases insulin resistance, elevates your stress hormones like cortisol that promote fat storage, and impairs the liver's ability to perform its normal regenerative and repair functions. Consistently getting 7 to 8 hours of high-quality, restorative sleep creates a metabolic environment that actively supports your liver's health and optimal function. Minimizing alcohol consumption also really matters because alcohol is metabolized almost entirely in the liver, and this process generates oxidative stress and inflammation that directly contribute to fat accumulation within the liver. Even moderate amounts of alcohol can be problematic and accelerate damage if you're already dealing with a fatty liver. Indeed, just a couple of alcoholic beverages a night can be truly detrimental. And another incredibly simple yet highly effective habit to mention is walking after meals, particularly after dinner. This gentle activity helps immensely to clear glucose from your bloodstream and significantly reduces the sharp insulin spike that would otherwise signal your liver to store that glucose as fat. These might seem like really small, almost insignificant habits when considered in isolation, but they compound over time with extraordinary power. Making one or two of these changes might produce modest, albeit positive, benefits. However, implementing all of them consistently creates a holistic metabolic environment where your liver can genuinely heal itself, shed excess fat, and regain the flexibility and intelligence that protects it, and by extension, your entire body against the relentless forces of accelerated aging. What I often find particularly difficult and frustrating about the contemporary longevity conversation is that it has become cluttered with an overwhelming array of often expensive supplements, trendy biohacking fads, and extreme, unproven interventions like cold plunges, hyperbaric oxygen therapy, or NAD boosters. While some of these might offer marginal or niche benefits for a select few, they are largely optimizing around the edges, focusing on superficial fixes while entirely ignoring the fundamental foundation of health. If your liver is actively accumulating fat and progressively losing its metabolic flexibility, then no amount of exotic supplements, no matter how expensive, or biohacks can truly compensate for that deep upstream dysfunction. Real, sustainable longevity is fundamentally about maintaining robust metabolic flexibility, the inherent ability of your body to switch efficiently and gracefully between burning and storing energy, between utilizing glucose as a fuel source and effectively using fat, and between the vital processes of building and repairing tissues. Your liver, by virtue of its central role, is the ultimate gatekeeper of that flexibility. When your liver is working properly with optimal function and adaptive capacity, everything downstream in your body works better and more efficiently. Conversely, when your liver becomes dysfunctional, every other optimization, every other health intervention you attempt is essentially fighting an uphill battle against a metabolic environment that is fundamentally hostile to long-term health and vitality. If you actively protect your liver, you are effectively slowing aging at its very source, at the most fundamental metabolic level. You prevent the entire cascade of insulin resistance, chronic systemic inflammation, and oxidative damage that relentlessly drives every major age-related disease. You empower your body to maintain critical muscle mass. You preserve invaluable brain function and cognitive sharpness. You keep your cardiovascular system flexible, responsive, and resilient. You maintain the vibrant energy and robust resilience that truly defines what it means to be biologically young, irrespective of how many chronological years you have actually lived. But if you choose to ignore your liver, if you allow metabolic dysfunction to develop unchecked and unaddressed, then no amount of downstream intervention, no matter how well-intentioned or scientifically advanced, can fully compensate for that foundational breakdown. You can exercise religiously, pouring hours into your fitness, yet if you have a fatty liver, you simply won't build muscle as effectively or efficiently as someone with a healthy liver. You can invest in expensive brain supplements, yet if you are insulin resistant, your cognitive decline will still accelerate at an alarming rate. You can meticulously focus on heart health, diligently monitoring cholesterol and blood pressure, yet if you have metabolic syndrome rooted in liver dysfunction, your atherosclerosis will continue to progress, often silently and insidiously, regardless. Your liver fundamentally controls how fast you age, yet for most people, it remains an afterthought, an organ they never consciously think about until something goes obviously and dramatically wrong. By then, years or even decades of cumulative silent damage have already accumulated, making the path to recovery far more challenging. Understanding this profound connection between your liver and your overall aging trajectory, proactively monitoring your key metabolic markers, and consistently making the necessary dietary and lifestyle changes that actively protect your liver health. These are not optional extras or mere add-ons for achieving longevity. They are, unequivocally, the foundational pillars, the indispensable bedrock that ultimately determines whether everything else that you do for your health actually works, or whether your efforts are perpetually undermined by an unchecked, silent metabolic foe.